We are. Well,
Now we're
with
good.
with that minor detail, we'll move forward. Thank you, Jen, for the introduction. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us today for our webinar on the topic of maximizing security through integration. And as Jen said, my name is John Harlow. I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing for Absco Solutions. We are, as most of you know, an experienced life safety and security solutions specialist contractor. We're based here in the Northwest. We have assembled a team of experts in the field, and we have a legacy of providing best-in-class solutions for about the last 45 years. We do have a team of highly trained sales and operations folks, and we have certified individuals, and we deliver optimized systems and integration that add value for clients. We have expertise in protecting assets in many environments and many industries, including multi-site, multi-building, and campus environments. Our dedicated sales and design and operations teams are effective at delivering solutions to provide actionable intelligence for your organizations. And we partner with best-in-class product manufacturers like Motorola. Next slide, please. And the next slide really is a compilation of all of the primary security and life safety system pillars that we offer, whether it be video, access control, communications, fire systems, but really also the complementary services that go with that, from discovery through design, the integration of systems, and then supporting those systems after they're installed with our customer care and managed services offerings. Next slide. As I mentioned earlier, we are an elite Motorola Safety Reimagined partner, and also a Vigilon Elite partner, and offer the full suite of products from Motorola. Next slide. And the next slide here speaks to really our team, both from a sales and marketing perspective. We do have a couple of newer faces there down on the bottom that have introduced in the past, but the newest being Brendan Murphy and of course Ray Rounsley. So we have a full team ready to support your needs. Next slide. And with that, I am going to introduce Andrew Fletchall, our Managing Director at Absco Solutions. Andrew has in the past been very active from a technology perspective within the company, managing our design department. So with that, we're going to hand it over to Andrew to talk about system integration. Andrew?
Thank you. I think you guys saw that picture of me. That is an older, less gray, but also less attractive version of me. So it is the same person who's on the mic right now. Thanks for the introduction, John. I appreciate it. A little bit more background. So I have just upwards of 20 years in the electronic security field. Been with Absco for about 8 years now. As John mentioned, I'm currently the managing director, which kind of means I have my hands in a lot of different pots. With my time at Absco, I've been in operations through system design, even HR. One of the things I enjoy most about working at Absco is my ability to work with customers, end users, partners, and developing solutions to problems, engineering systems such that we can streamline the effectiveness of what y'all are looking for. Today, we're going to talk about integration, but just to set the stage, what I want to ensure that we get out of today, it's not so much about the education about integration. It's about having you all think about your systems today as I'm going through these slides. And if there are things that we can work together on to enhance your system, that's my big takeaway. Yes, there's going to be some examples I will throw out, and yes, we will talk about defining integration and what that means. But really, as we're going through, I want you to understand what's out there today and how it can affect your systems. And that's where you can leverage Motorola, Absco Solutions, to really understand how we can streamline your system and create a decent business function for what you're looking at. All right, so on to this first slide. So as we talk about integration, integration is very simple in terms of definition. So the coordination interaction between different system, devices, components in a given environment. Doesn't really mean a lot, right? Integration can be used in all different facets, not just talking about security specifically. You all understand that one of the primary issues that we get stuck with is budgeting. How do we budget, or how do we move forward with moving to a system that I really want, but I can't afford? Well, there are things we can do to help either migrate to that, or there are things we can do to look at building upon what's currently in place through integration without having to replace entire systems. Well, as we go through the deck, we'll look at a couple different examples, some of these hardware and software integrations. And again, just to invoke some thought on how you guys might be able to enhance your system. The ideal goal is to create an interoperable system that enhances overall effectiveness and responsiveness by affecting items such as, but not limited to, interoperability, data sharing, centralized management, automation, enhanced situational awareness, and increased workforce efficiency. All right, next slide, please. All right, understanding the different types of integration. What are the different types of integration? There's a hardware integration when you're connecting two or more devices via physical connection, allowing these systems to work together. So pretty basic, it's done through some I/O outputs. You have a relay on one side, triggering an input on another side, and telling two systems how they're going to talk to each other. And we'll talk more about hardware integration in a moment. And there's software integrations. So connecting two or more systems that allow the data transfer and operability in a single system. And we have two types of software integrations. We have a native and a custom software integration, which again, we're going to go into a little bit more detail. All right, Jen, next slide. All right, here is a simple example of a hardware integration that many of you either have applied or have seen. So what you'll see there at the top of the screen is a picture of a request to exit, a lot of different nicknames for it, an RQE, RTE, REX. And this is a simple hardware integration. We're taking the request to exit, and when somebody walks underneath the motion, it trips a relay. And that relay sends an output to the access control system. Tells the access control system that basically somebody walked underneath the door, just through a dumb contact closure. So we don't have any sort of alarm event, and we know that that was an approved egress point versus a breach point coming through from the other side of the door. Let's go to the next slide, Jen. There's another simple example here of a hardware integration. So a door contact, again, if any of you have access control systems, you likely have a door contact. And again, it's a very simple hardware integration where the door contact is a closed circuit. It opens up on a breach, or opens up anytime somebody comes through the door, but without a grant, opens up an alarm event, which triggers the panel. And then in this scenario, the access control panel is also sending an output to an intrusion panel. So the door is breached, sends a relay closure over to the access control panel, which sends a relay closure to the intrusion panel, which then the intrusion panel calls a central station or calls whatever response plan is in place for whatever policies and procedures you have to respond to that action. So there's no data being transferred between the devices. It's just a relay closure and an input being recognized, another relay closure, and another input being recognized. So a very, very basic example of a hardware integration. There's a couple other hardware integrations. Oops, sorry, Jen, go back a slide real quick.
Whoops.
There's a couple other hardware integrations that I want to walk through, just to really, again, I want to invoke some thought on what you have in your system today and how you can enhance your system. Another simple integration is a fire alarm control panel output to an access control system. So in a fire event, free egress is determined and required by code. However, due to security, there may be a robust fail-secure lock or mag lock that prevents egress. So purely by sending an output from the fire alarm control panel to an access control panel, in the fire event, it would tell the access control panel or power supply to drop the power or unlock a door so that people would have free egress out. So no crazy sort of integration there, just an output over to an input and telling one system to do something commanded from another system. What if I wanted my intrusion system to do more than just call a central station? So maybe I want to trip an output from my intrusion system over to a BMS or building management system. And maybe I also want to trip a relay output from my intrusion system to my paging system. So in the event of a breach, when somebody opens that door and comes into my facility, all the lights turn on and the paging system will start creating some sort of pre-recorded message like get out. Or we could even go as far as having talk down through integrations. But at the end of the day, creating additional features to mitigate any other future or potential loss based off that particular breach. Another simple example revolves around sensors. So in an IT closet, maybe I have a floor water sensor and I have a heat sensor. So I want to know if my technology gets wet and I want to know, or if it's going to get wet and I want to know if it's getting too hot. So from there, I can take these sensors and I can connect them again to an intrusion system or an access control system and have it alert a central station. I can have it alert an access control system, and I can trigger also my interface with the video management system. So I can either see video of what's going on. I can create some sort of unlock for people to get in the room and maybe address the issue with what's happening. And I can also send an alert to the central station. So they call me 24/7 and I know if my gear is going to be drowned or burned up. The last type of hardware integration that I want to talk about is a network IO logic devices. So I use the term IO, inputs, outputs. It's very simple. An IO device is just as a contact closure and a relay output. So an input and output. There's devices that can be put on a network. So when it sits on the network, I can create a contact closure to start interfacing with different systems. For example, if I took an IO network device and put it on my system, and maybe I had a door that had a door contact on it. And every time this door contact opens up, I want to have maybe a hot screen in a security operations center pop up. So by simply creating an input onto this IO device that is networked, now my video management software system, when that door opens up to whoever my operator is, I can pop up a screen and I can see what the event is. Another alarm comes in, the same thing, another alarm pops up, video pops up, and I can see real time. Maybe I don't have an intrusion system. Maybe I don't have somebody who can monitor my system 24/7, but I have a security officer that is available 24/7 that can respond directly to it or dispatch another officer to go take a look. So there's a few examples of some hardware integrations. Kind of the first step when we're talking about integrations, we may not have the funding or availability, or there may not be the option to create software integrations. But there's always ways we can look at hardware integrations. And hardware integrations expands more than just IO inputs and outputs. We can look at media converters. If I have a really old legacy analog system and I can't afford to replace the cable, or maybe it's not possible, the raceways aren't available, but the cable's intact and it works, but I want to move to an IP system, we can use a media converter and change it from a coax to an Ethernet connection. And by way of just converting that signal, we can update our entire system to a digital system and move away from analog, which will then open up more features to integrate with different software platforms. Another example of media converters, if I have, say, a facility that has a burglar system, an intrusion system, and I have a shed that's 50 yards away, and I have network in the shed, but I don't have an intrusion system over the shed. And I don't want to put an intrusion system in because I don't want to have to pay for the install, and I don't want to have to pay for the monitoring for a whole other system when maybe it's just one or two contacts. Well, I can use a media converter to convert a network signal to an RS-45 and set up kind of like, think of it as a hub where it's attached to my system. I have the monitoring I want and I can partition it out, but I'm not having to pay for additional monitoring and additional panels outside of the existing panel that I have today. And that's all done through media converters and a hardware integration. Those media converters, they're transferring data, but at the end of the day, they're not creating data. They're just a vehicle to get information from one place to another. Not much different than just an IO closure like we were talking about in earlier examples. Okay, next slide. So software integration, we're going to start talking about custom integration. We're going to finish off with talking about native integrations. So custom integration happens when an API code is developed independently of a software to create connections between software solutions. Creating a feed between systems through an API will allow data sets and features to be shared. Custom integrations are very unique to the use case, and many times costly. However, can be a very effective alternative to entire system replacements. Management becomes critical. Somebody needs to own, maintain, and update the API for full functionality. We're going to talk about pros and cons between the three different integration options here in a short bit. But ultimately, what a custom integration is there's a software system or a system with software. That particular system, the manufacturer will share the API. So then you have another system where you have a developer that will create hooks into that API and bring in either feature sets or data that are usable in their system to create a more streamlined approach to system management. All right, next slide, please. I'm going to give a couple examples of some custom integrations, some actual use cases that I've personally been involved with. The first one, I'm going to talk about the interoperability between HMI or human machine interface, video surveillance, and intercom interoperability. So in this case, there was a correctional facilities that had old legacy systems, an old legacy intercom system, an old legacy camera system, and an old legacy HMI system. And the end user wanted to update the entire system, but they didn't want to have their user experience change. They wanted to have the exact same mock-up, if you will, or graphics interface that they had before, because they want to relearn an entire system. So we were able to leverage our partners and create a system that created the same end user experience, but was enhanced because we were able to use the API and bring in camera feeds. So if they went to unlock a door on their screen, the camera would pop up so they could see who's at the door while they're allowing somebody through, or before they allow somebody through, ideally. In addition to that, the HMI also interfaced with a new intercom system. So when they pull up the intercom, the same thing happens where they can pull up the camera and see who they're speaking to prior to unlocking a door. So the methods for the old infrastructure and digital management platform with automated camera feeds and intercom requests can prove difficult, not impossible, with shelf solutions. So having this unique circumstance was not available off the shelf. And the only option at this point was to use a series of some hardware integrations and a custom integration to make this customer happy with the final end user experience and enhancing the system, right? Not just replacing what they had today that was still semi-functional, but enhancing it, creating the same experience, but in a much more efficient approach. Alrighty, next slide. Here's another example. This actually also happened to be in a correctional facility. So customer had a third-party camera system. And one, they really liked it. They didn't want to migrate away from it. And two, they didn't have funding to replace it. But they did need to replace their door access system and their intercom system. So we worked with a customer and we worked with a manufacturer and we developed a third-party integration so that our door access system and intercom system we put in, they were connected through a hardware integration. So if they were to push a button on their door system, it would activate the intercoms and unlock doors appropriately. And then with a custom integration, we were able to pull in the third-party video. So again, when somebody pushes a button at an intercom, a hot screen pops up so the end user can see who's at the door before they gain access anywhere through a secure facility. And the same thing with clicking on a door and opening a door, they're able to have those video screens pop up. And then again, it's a combination of hardware integrations because the access control and intercoms were hardwired together. But there's a third-party integration that was able to bring in the video management through a third party that didn't have an existing integration as of today. All right, next slide, please, Jen. So native integration utilizes the API code that's written into the software itself, which enables communication with one or more other applications. So the native integration, where software is built off the same API. We're not reaching over into a different platform and creating a developer to create the hooks. It's written on the same API. So that's the difference between a custom integration and a native integration. Integrations may already exist in the software. This may be easy enabling feature within the software. So there are a lot of features within these within software that has native features. So there may be a feature set that I want to enable, and I just click, yes, I want to install this, or yes, I want to pay for that license. But it already exists, and I can bring it in relatively easily. Whether it's going to be cost effective for what I want to do is a different conversation, but at least it's there and available for me to use. We're going to talk more about native integrations specifically later on down in the presentation. Next slide. So here's some pros and cons between the different types of integrations. The pros for hardware integration. So it works as long as the hardware is functioning. Again, we're just talking about a contact closure and an input. Just two hardware systems talking to each other through these closures. So as long as the hardware is working, then the system should work. There's no need for software updates on hardware integrations. There's no software, there's no information, there's no data that needs to be patched or updated. It's just contact closures. It may be very inexpensive depending on what existing infrastructure is in place. In lots of times when we have an access control panel and intrusion panel, for example, they're mounted on the same wall in the same room and sometimes just a couple feet apart. So if I need to create a link between the two to have them speak, I put in a pipe between them, run some cable, hook it up, and might be some programming on the back end, but relatively a simple solution. The limitations for hardware integration, so limited features to only trigger IO signals, and it may require additional hardware where real estate doesn't allow. So maybe I don't have enough relay outputs somewhere, so I need to add an enclosure and put another board in and then wire it up. The other thing with the con against hardware integrations is there is limited reporting features. So I can pull a report that tells me if a relay trips or doesn't trip, and I can see on a report if I received a signal alarm input or not, but it doesn't really tell me what it is. I might have a program, so I have an idea, but I'm just limited to seeing it, whether it's a yes/no signal that's come in from that hardware integration. For native software integration, the pros. So it's been developed and tried and true. It's been put in production, been used, likely patched and supported. Usually sold as a feature of the software, so has minimal to no cost. We're not paying somebody to come develop something for us. And it's very robust as the integrations are written through the same API. The con for the software native integrations is usually rigid and developed over time to add additional features. So again, as the software continues to develop, more feature sets are getting added. So if we need a feature set to be added right away, maybe that won't be an option unless we know whatever milestone we're going to hit to get to that development phase. It's also limited to the most recent version of development, kind of like I just mentioned. We might know it's coming and we know it's 6 months down the road. I need that solution today. I don't have time to wait 6 months, so I need to look at an alternative option. Custom software integrations. They can be highly customized to meet almost any business case. The example that I showed earlier was we wanted to create the exact end user experience, and we had to create it from the ground up. Used instead of creating the need to replace an entire system. So I might have two legacy systems, or maybe legacy, two systems, and I really want them to connect. It might be more cost effective to use a custom integration to bring them together than replacing the entire system with something that is already compatible and written in. Now, long-term planning, that may not be the best option for a couple of reasons we'll talk about in a sec with the cons, but it is an option. With custom software integration, we want to use the right tool for the right job, and it may be very specific and require a third-party platform. So one of the things that we look at designing systems is we don't want to negotiate functionality and security for the sake of cost. If there's a very specific job that we need software to do, it needs to do that job. And if it doesn't exist in the market or through some native integration, we really should work with a developer, whether it's a manufacturer or a third-party developer, to create that exact solution to do what we need it to do. Otherwise, we may be wasting our investment. The last pro, can't create and replicate the exact look and feel, replace legacy systems like I mentioned. The cons, so custom software integrations are expensive. They're not cheap. Something I didn't note in here, they also take some time to develop. So usually if we get to the place where we have a custom integration, we can find somebody that can do it, and we want to move forward relatively quickly. It still takes a few weeks to develop to make sure it's been tested correctly and putting it in a similar environment to ensure that when it's actually put into production, it works as it's supposed to. Another con is it needs to be maintained by the developer. So when we have a custom integration that interfaces with a third-party system, that third-party system will need updated, whether it's a Windows update or whether it's a software update. And if that application has a change in an API, now we have a different set of hooks that need to be created. And if that isn't maintained over time, then we're going to lose that custom integration. And again, at that point, we've wasted our investment. So one of the things to keep in mind with custom integrations is there should be some sort of maintenance applied to it or cost over time to make sure that that custom integration stays in place and stays functional based off the updates, whatever systems we're affecting. And I just hit on the last one. If the API changes, then the software is likely to fail. Okay, next slide, please. So what happens, and I kind of mentioned this earlier, when you transcend integration. So we talked about hardware integrations where we are connecting a couple systems through some IO inputs, right? IO, open, close, input, output, yes, no, simple circuits. Talk about software integrations where we're pulling information from one system to another in a data exchange. What happens when the systems are fully integrated? So I have a unified system that creates a seamless end user experience through a pane of glass. That is called unification. So I have one system where I'm managing my cameras, my access, my intrusion. That is a full unified system. So there's integration, we can bring things together, unification, everything's working as one. All right, next slide, please, Jen. All right, so at this time, I'd like to hand it over to Mike Golson. Saw his wonderful picture along with mine earlier in the presentation. So Mike is a sales engineer with Motorola Solutions. Mike leads strategies and process improvement for video, artificial intelligence, access control, body camera cloud applications, and integrations. And really happy to have him here to speak specifically more about Motorola and some of the integrations that they offer. Being said, Mike, I will hand it over to you, sir.
All right, thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
Can you guys hear me? I can't see my picture either. So, and I am losing my voice. I apologize. I came to Alaska for a conference and the air is really dry up here. So currently losing my voice, but I will try to get through this one. I've been an engineer for this kind of technology for over 20 years. One thing that impressed me about the way Motorola is doing things is they've actually combined everything together to work on the premise of integration. And we were just talking about that. What I've seen as an engineer here is Motorola really makes it easier to manage your day-to-day tasks when you're talking about managing radios, video management systems, access control, specialty kind of things like license plate recognition. You put a license plate camera on a tree and you want to connect to it over cellular, those kind of things. Motorola has really brought all that together, and what they used to call Safety Reimagined is now Motorola Solutions Ecosystem. And they do have this company, we do have the native integration, but the one thing I like to tell everybody is that we're not proprietary. So most of our products will work with other systems. We do work with other systems as well. So if you have other cameras, other access control systems, things like that, they all bring it together under that single pane of glass. That's huge. When you're talking about especially software and security, a lot of times it ends up becoming an issue for IT, or it becomes an issue for the network, not just IT, but also people on the network using the systems. So Motorola has quite a plethora of different products to choose from. And what they've done from a marketing standpoint is actually quite unique. What we have here is a couple of different ways to go about looking at this type of scenario. First part is to really detect. They have a detect algorithm, then they have an analyze algorithm where you can detect what's happening with the video system, access control. You can detect what's happening with the body control, the body worn cameras, bring it into the video security system and tie them together. We do have on-premise, a lot of on-premise systems, but nowadays, what people are really talking about are the cloud. And we have the full cloud system, video security and access control on the cloud as well for those customers who are looking to get rid of the boxes or get rid of the servers and put everything out on the cloud. You know, there are scenarios where you want to use the cloud, and there are scenarios where you want to use the on-premise solution. It just depends on the environment, what's better for the customer, what is better for the end user, essentially. The Vigilant piece of it also ties into it. With Vigilant, we're able to do a lot of license plate detection, as well as upload information about license plate into a national database. So if you have a situation where you want to continue to monitor certain parts of the city for, you know, all kinds of different scenarios where you may be interested in tracking a plate going across the country, they do have a system for that that does tie directly into the Safety Reimagined, or the ecosystem. If you can go to the next slide. And the next part of it is communicate and respond. You know, how do you know, everybody can essentially go through and detect and analyze. Well, how do you then take that information? Motorola has several products with the decision management system, incident management system with Ally, like 911 centers, that kind of thing. Moto Turbo. You know, I've dealt a lot with customers who take some of these analytics. You know, a real simple one would be something like, hey, I want to point a camera at an alleyway, and at 2 a.m., I want to detect when a human being is back there, and maybe that human being is back there for longer than 30 seconds, maybe a minute. I want to detect when that happens. And then what do? You know, we take that information and we automatically send a message to the radio system, and you can send a security guard out there. And maybe if it's not a managed, you know, you don't have any personnel on site, you want to send a message to your cell phone. You know, you kind of roll over in bed and you go, why is my phone going off? And you look at your phone and you say, oh, there's somebody back there in the alleyway that's not supposed to be there. And then you do what you need to do to contact 911 or whatnot, and you know, get that situation taken care of. And then, of course, we have the radio broadband for customers who have campus-wide wireless needs, and you know, can tie into the whole thing. So that's basically Safety Reimagined, the Motorola ecosystem in one. Like I said, it's not proprietary. You don't have to stick to our full-on package. You know, we can connect to other systems as well. We can connect with other incident management systems. We can connect other radios. We can connect other VMSs, things like that. I know we talked a little bit earlier about hardware integration. Every single one of the cameras in the Motorola platform has an input and also an output to it. So we can bring and tie in other external systems into the system if there's no software integration at all. But most of the time, what I've seen working here, I've been here about 3.5 years. Most of the products here are fully compliant with, you know, like on-VIF video standards, API call standards, things like that, REST API, that kind of thing. So rest assured that we're not creating a enclosed, you know, platform that nobody can talk to. This is fully open, and we work well with other products. So. If you go to that next slide, I think there was one that kind of shows everything all together. And the package that we have in the center is called Orchestrate, and that's how we essentially tie it all together. You can see that right there in the center above the large circle is where we have that. The exciting thing for me especially is watching this whole cloud environment mature. You know, there's a lot of competing products out there. You know, you can buy your VMS anywhere. You can buy your cloud solution anywhere. You can buy, you know, just off of Amazon, a license plate reader. You can buy radios off of Amazon, for Pete's sake. But how do you tie all that together? Do you piece and part it together and spend all your time managing that whole system when it breaks? Or do you call a, you know, unified company like Motorola, and we can tie it all together for you using our platform, or even the tie-ins that we have to these other platforms. So we'd like you to choose us, and we'd like to have a chance at your business, you know, and see if we could come up with a solution for you. I think the next slide was a little bit about Alta. I think if you go to that next slide, This is essentially what we call, we went through a rebranding here earlier this year, and Alta is the name of our cloud video and cloud access control. So you have that customer who doesn't have any on-premise, so they don't want to install any kind of servers and to deal with their video surveillance or their access control. We can look at this platform. We also have the capability to bring in existing on-premise cameras and then tie those into the cloud as well, so they don't have to go rip and replace everything as well. Avigilon Unity is what we're calling our on-premise software package, both video management as well as access control. And both of these products have been around for a very long time, very rock solid product offerings here. And I'm actually at a conference this week, which is probably another reason for my voice going out. These products are a lot of specialty cameras, a lot of ways to solve your needs. And I invite you to look at the webpage and to take a look at what we have to offer. And the next slide. And this is a little bit about the access control on premise. Yeah.
I missed that.
And there we go. So I don't know what we have for now, but I think that's it for my part of the presentation, right?
I think I'll just add in there real quick. So in the slide presentation, you'll see the link at the bottom of the last 4 slides, and that will take you to the page to discuss what existing integrations are out there today with Motorola. Some of the software integrations they've already created. One of the things, unfortunately, we didn't have enough time to do was to go through the list because there's so many, but we wanted to provide that information for y'all to take a look and review in your leisure when you get a chance. All right, Jennifer, back to you.
Yep, and we will probably by tomorrow at the latest send everybody the recording as well as the PowerPoint. So you've got those links right there. But now we'd love to open the floor for questions. If anyone has a question, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question or throw it in the chat.
Hey, this is Chad. Just wanted to throw out another use case that I'm working on right now with another customer, which is pretty unique, but it speaks to the power of integration. Imagine a college campus environment where true integration is possible. We are now entering a world of tying databases. So it's a combination of hardware and software coming together into if I have a smart system and a campus environment where I know what classes are being held in what building, who is registered to attend these classes, and I show up with my smartphone and say, hey, I'm here for my class at 7 p.m. Everything else in the campus is closed, but the system knows that this building is hosting a class at this time using this building in this classroom. Regardless of all of the devices that are on the building, you have to assume there's an access control reader on the entrance to the main building. I can pull out my phone, show the system that I'm here. It unlocks the door, lets me into that building, turns on the lights, and then shuts it down when the class is over. And with those requests to exits, we've seen 22 people arrive, 22 people have left, system rearms. And as schedules and classes change last minute, the system knows because it's inputted. This teacher is sick. It's not going to happen in this building. We have a sub coming in. We're going to be at a different building. All that happens automatically. So pretty cool stuff when you actually take into consideration a true integration, unification between software, hardware, multiple systems. This is what's possible today, which I thought was a pretty cool use case. It's not easy, it is complex, and there is that custom programming that Andrew was talking about required. This is not something that is just sitting off the shelf. This is going to require a pretty serious commitment financially and time-wise to make this happen and test it and prove that it works. But this is what's possible. Pretty cool.
Thanks, Chad. That is exciting. I can't imagine. That's a long way from where we were when I went to college.
Andrew, maybe you could speak to Orchestrate and the ease of acquiring Orchestrate, especially for existing Motorola Avigilon customers, and how to best leverage that that native integration, if you will.
Yeah, actually, I might have Mike speak to that. I think Mike is probably more of the expert. Mike, can you talk a little bit more about Orchestrate and just how that ties everything together?
Yeah, as long as my voice will hold out. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
I'm talking in a really low voice. Orchestrate actually is a software package that you'll have either a virtual machine on your local network or a physical box that will then take and tie the information from whatever Motorola system you have on premise, and then it ties that into the cloud. So we have a cloud instance with the Orchestrate, and we don't have a presentation here about it, but I invite you to go to the website and look at it. But it's actually a very unique interface. You know, the days of hiring a software programmer to essentially take the command. Let's say you want a camera, like my example earlier. The camera had an analytic at 2 a.m. There's some guy back there in the alley trying to steal something out of your yard or whatever. How do you take that information, that analytic alarm? That alarm has to be sent somewhere. In the old days, you take something like that analytic alarm and you would create a script. And there's a rules engine and all kinds of things like that in the software. That rule, you take that script, and then now what do you do with it? How do you send it to another system? Well, with the Orchestrate system, it's drag and drop. You take that analytic event and it comes into Orchestrate, and then there's literally a drag and drop function. It's just like creating a spreadsheet on, a PowerPoint presentation. You drag like a workflow, and you say, all right, well, I'm going to take that information, drag that over. I want to contact Bob. I want to contact maybe a group of guys that are, sitting in the security booth or whatnot, a certain shift, or Rob at home. I want him to know when that particular analytic event occurred. And number one, it's built into the software, but number two, it can be sent to any external system that we support. And then that's all done through the cloud, and it's done through a drag and drop interface. So, I hate to, take jobs away from some of these, hardcore software developers that have a specialty and a little niche in what they do, right? But, it's harder and harder to find people internally to do all that. So what Motorola has done is created this ecosystem, this Orchestrate package, where you can visualize how that's going to look and follow it through a flow chart to actually figure out how somebody's going to get notified or how that particular process works. And it works really well. I'm the engineer for the sales team here, and I typically don't like to talk about something unless I've used it, and I have used this system. And it is pretty awesome to see how they've put this together. The one that gets me really excited are the radios. Notifying somebody on their radio, once the radio system's all set up and on the back end, how to take and tie that into a VMS is huge. Also, it talks back the other direction too. The guy on the radio says, I've checked this out, I've already done it. He hits OK on his radio. It then goes back in and it confirms the alarm back on the software side. So just the whole ability to do that is amazing to me.
Yeah, and as Steve Strobeck noted in the chat, that Orchestrate is a complementary middleware when used with Avigilon ACC or Unity.
Yep.
That's a huge benefit. And then really the cost of deploying it really is some integration services from AppSco to customize and make it achieve the functionality that you're after. Yeah. Thanks, Mike. Any other questions?
I would state from a sales perspective, we've got some end users on this phone call. We've also got some engineers as well. But for the end users, you know, it's the same. It's the saying, you don't know what you don't know. And it's really our job as AppSco and the engineers who are learning about what's possible to start having conversations around what is, because you know, you can get lost in all these options and connecting this with that with IO. It's at the end of the day, what we want to do is solve problems, and we want to provide the investment that you're spending a lot of time and money to invest in, to become a product that is useful and beneficial for an everyday workflow, security, safety, whatever it is. You know, and it's our job as AppSco to kind of talk through what is it that's going to have a positive effect on your day-to-day, what's missing, what can we tie together, and I would encourage you to engage us in those conversations and allow us an opportunity to kind of talk through what does that next year or 2 or 3 look like, because there are solutions like what Motorola has offered now. If you've already invested $500,000 in 300 cameras that don't have this intelligence, there is a migration path, pretty cost-effective migration path, to get you to this intelligent integration offering through a special artificial intelligent NVR or a little black box that we can add this intelligence to, and then start tying things together. So, you know, engage us in conversations. Let's solve problems together. Let's get you guys more secure, better intel, faster, accurate intel to the right people at the right time. And that's what really our job is at AppSco, is to help you guide that conversation, show you what's possible, and then help you solve that problem. So I appreciate your guys' interest in this subject. It is a ongoing conversation.
Any other questions?
Well, great. I appreciate everybody listening to my ugly voice today. It was a pleasure getting to present to you. Thank you very much. I look forward to any of you whom I haven't met in person eventually getting to do so.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, everybody, very much for coming. We appreciate your time, and definitely want to offer our services and having those conversations, because you just don't know what's out there and what's possible. We'd love to have that opportunity to discuss it with you.